Hello, welcome back to another episode of Taking Care With. Today we have Pariss Garner, who is our new content lead, so new member here at Inner Workout. I'm so excited for you to get to meet her and also for you to hear about how she takes care. So let's start with them meeting you, Pariss. You are our content lead. You are actually going to be helping manage this show as well as Inner Warm Up, our new podcast that's, well, by the time this comes out, will have already been launched.
Right.
Some of our blog content, so many cool things that you get to help out with and like bring your creative expertise to. Um, but I know you also do stuff outside of Inner Workout, so tell us a little bit about you and what you're up to.
Yeah. So, I write. I'm a writer. And I've lately been calling myself a teacher. I'm working on revamping my coaching business. But instead of it being from a coaching aspect, more of a teaching vibe. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes with that. So I'll just leave it at that for now. But that's what I'm working on. Yeah, and loving inner workout, of course, that is my thing.
And it's been, I mean, you've been on the team. You started working with me on my podcast, B School, and then I was like, okay, I'm completely rearranging everything. Do you
Yeah.
want to hop on to Inner Workout stuff? And you did, and it's already been such a treat, and I'm so excited for what's next.
Yeah,
So that's like a stay tuned for everyone. Me
absolutely.
and Paris and Deanna are going to make some magic happen.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited.
So, and when we post this, I hope that everyone will say hi.
Yeah.
But we're here to talk about our take care assessment and get some tips from you on where you scored highest. So, for everyone who doesn't know, take care assessment is our 75 question assessment that measures well being across 5 dimensions. We had Paris take it, and she scored highest in connection to something bigger, which falls under the bliss dimension. And I always like to really target that bliss is not being like, oh, I'm so blissed out, I'm disconnected. Bliss is like the state of really hyper connection to yourself,
Yeah.
to others, and to something bigger than you,
Yeah.
which looks different for everyone. So I'm really curious to hear from you how you feel like you stay connected to something bigger.
Yeah. So I worked with kids for 15 years. And so I feel like my heart is really still with children, but as I've stepped out of that role over the last year, I'm kind of seeing that everything that went into working with kids um, kind of helps me in the real world. So, like with coaching and with making connections with people, patience, talking, like all that type of stuff. I think that working with kids really kind of set the tone for what I will do in life, what I'm already doing. Um, and yeah, I think that I stay connected with myself and with things like that by doing a lot of inner work. Um, and that helps me to have better relationships with people in general, with my clients, with children, if I still get back into working with kids at some point. Um, and yeah, I spend a lot of time alone, especially in during the pandemic. I live alone. And so it's just given me a really, really huge opportunity to see myself from different perspectives that I wasn't really seeing before. Um, and in that, I think connecting with myself, it just helps me connect with everyone else in the world. So,
Awesome. And so to like drill down into the connection to something bigger, which for some people that's nature, for some people that's religion or spirituality, how does that show up for you? And if that's shifted over the past years or throughout your life, how did those shifts happen?
yeah. So, with all of that, I'm into like numerology and astrology and all the things. And a lot of my stuff says that I'm a helper. Um, and so, yeah, I think that with having this caretaker, empathetic, compassionateness about me, um, I'm connected to that role, to being that person who can help people, to advise people or teach people. Um, yeah, yeah. I'm a helper. I just want to help. I just want to do all the things and give back. So yeah.
So I heard you in that mention like kind of an archetype. So this archetype of the helper or the caregiver, which shows up in so many different aspects, like you just mentioned, numerology, astrology, these different things. Would you say that those frameworks are things that help you feel more connected to like the universe or something beyond you, or are there other tools that help you?
Absolutely. I picked up more on, I've always been into astrology, but with, religion and things like that, it was like, no, don't do that. That's not a thing. We don't believe in that type of stuff. And now that I'm a full grown adult and I can make my own choices, I've gotten into it. And it's just really numerology and astrology both, but they've just helped me to really see myself. There's a lot that's in those charts, and I think that there's so much in there that you may not fully see or understand about yourself, but when it's pointed out, it's like, oh yeah, I know where that thing is, or oh, like I know how that shows up for me. So with those things like meditating, I love being out in nature, things like that, but really connected with myself. I do altar work. um yeah, those things have really helped me to like do all of that and connecting.
Mm. And what I like about, so I don't really know about numerology, but from what I know of astrology, there's also this sense of it's looking at like what is going on. The planets are moving around, all
Yeah,
of these different pieces. So you kind of have to be connected not just to that framework, but
yeah,
also to what's going on universally in the literal universe sense,
yeah,
because as things, solar systems, planets are shifting, then you're taking this thing that's happening more broadly and seeing, okay, how does this impact me specifically?
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So in all of these conversations, they're personal, like the whole idea is to hear how this shows up in individuals' lives. I think for the bliss dimension in particular, it's super personal when we're talking about how people connect to something that's bigger than them, that's beyond them. And so I'm curious for someone who doesn't quite know how they interact with nature or haven't tested out, like it sound, you mentioned this really briefly, but it sounds like you were raised in a religion and that shaped some of how you approach things, and now you have different tools that you use to engage with the universe, with spirituality. But I'm wondering for someone who's on that path and is kind of like, I don't know where to start, what would you recommend for them?
Ooh,
I know, a big question, huh?
yeah,
Just
that's
easy, a
yeah,
little softball for you.
right. Okay. How did I start? So like I said, I'm a writer and it's always been something that was in me, but it's also something that I shy away from because I think there's such a huge calling for it. And it's like, okay, if that's the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, it's like, oh, I don't want to touch that. So I'll do all these other things. Like I'll do design work and I'll blah 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 blah. But trying to use my writing in everything that I do now. So I started with that. Like I was blogging. And I think the more that I was blogging, that turned into like, oh, I should journal. Like that should be also a personal thing. So I started journaling. And that just, I don't know. I would say write out your thoughts. Like that's it. You journal, you look back at what's going on, and you can kind of see your growth. You can see what habits you have. You can see like what you're talking about. Like if you're talking about this one thing all the time, then clearly that's something that needs to be worked on. So I think taking that time for yourself, and I don't want to say meditating because when people hear meditating, they hear sitting down and doing the thing. Um, but I consider meditating something that is like prayer. You can dance, you can walk, you can just sit there with your eyes open with some music playing, or you could like whatever. But as long as you're alone in like in your own space and just to kind of hear what's coming up for you. Like I think a lot of times we say we don't know. I don't know what I should do, or I don't know what this thing is. And it's like, well, I think we kind of know. But we shy away from it because like it's change, it's the big thing, it's scary or whatever that means. So yeah, alone time. I would say alone time, really getting down to like what it is that you need and desire. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Paris. And some of what you mentioned kind of gets at the wisdom dimension too, like connection to something bigger falls under bliss, and that's like some of the spiritual tools that you mentioned. But what I'm hearing too is that connection to something bigger, you can think of that as like, that's how I relate to what is outward.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's you have to be able to turn inward and do some of that inner wisdom work and knowing yourself and hearing yourself to be
Yeah.
able to fully connect to something that's outside of you.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the framework of the five dimensions, because it's not just like we're chopped into five pieces.
Yeah.
They bleed into each other, and the work that you're doing in one area then can support you in another area. So I hope that people who are listening and exploring will find some way to check in with their thoughts,
Yeah.
find some way to meditate. And this is, I'm glad that you mentioned this, because I feel like I do a lot of things that are meditative, which sometimes are literally sitting down and meditating, and a lot of times are just being present to a
Yeah.
task and allowing it to become a type of meditation. So thanks for that call out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on this episode of Taking Care with everyone. I'm glad that you got a chance to meet to ugh, I'm probably going to keep this in because this is me tripping on my words.
I love
Um,
that.
I'm glad that everyone got a chance to meet Pariss, and you'll see more of her. Um, and I hope that you also had a chance to check in and maybe got a new tool, something that you'll experiment with. So until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.